Welcome everybody. It's so delightful to see so many of you here today. More than we expected last week. I think the numbers rose by about 10, 12. I think the final number came up to 99, and our target was 100. So that's absolutely marvellous. We're delighted to see you all. Before we kick off, I would like to introduce Chris Barber. Chris Barber is our pianist today. He's very kindly agreed to play for us throughout. Our first speaker today is Rachel Higgs. Now, Rachel is a founder member of the Norwich Businesswomen's Network, which makes her slightly older than 21.
Yeah.
And the network was founded some time ago to answer a need for businesswomen who wanted to network in the area. And Rachel's going to tell us all about it. Rachel's our opening speaker. We have several other speakers, as you know. After we've heard from Rachel, we'll be having our lunch. But now it's my great pleasure to introduce Rachel. Rachel Higgs.
Well, I don't need that then. Thank you. Mary Jane just asked me to say a few words about how this organisation came to be set up. And the story won't take very long to tell. I was approached in 1990 by one of my colleagues in our Cambridge office, Mills and Reeve has a Cambridge office, who was, I think she was secretary of what was called the Society of East Anglian Businesswomen, and they were thinking of setting up a Norwich branch. Would I be interested? Would I sound people out, see whether there was an appetite for it, and so forth? So I thought, well, that sounds very good, but I don't have the faintest clue how to go about as it were, accessing mailing lists, trying to find out where women were in business, in professional organisations and so on. I know I'll go to the Chamber of Commerce and see if I can nick a few of their mailing lists. So I picked up the phone and spoke to Deb Jackson, who was the membership secretary at the Chamber of Commerce. Some of you will probably remember her. She was very outgoing, very bubbly, very, very good at organisation. And she said, funny you should say that, I've been thinking of organising a monthly lunch for Chamber of Commerce members who are either they were women who'd registered their own organisation, or they were reasonably senior women within the organisations who were members of the Chamber. And we talked about it and decided we would do a little bit of market research, see what was out there already, because we didn't want to be reinventing the wheel. So I spent quite an interesting time going around what were then the women's or business women, professional women's organisations in and around Norwich, and just seeing whether or not they did provide, you know, for the sort of audience that we were thinking of providing for. And so I went along to various events. There were a number of organisations existing at that time. There was Matrix, Federation of Business and Professional Women, the Optimists. I don't think I went to one. I don't know that I went to one of their meetings, but I certainly went to quite a few meetings of these other organisations. And having done that, I mean, some I have to say were a little dull and some were quite exciting, but having done that, I thought, no, there is a gap here. There's a gap here for an organisation that's aimed both at professional and business women at a reasonably senior level. In other words, at the idea was to aim it at the decision makers within those organisations. So people who either ran their own businesses or had a managerial role, a reasonably senior managerial role in a larger organisation that they worked in. So having done the research, Deb Jackson and I joined forces, and we decided we weren't interested in just being an offshoot of an existing Cambridge organisation. We didn't want it to be branded as Chamber of Commerce. We wanted to set it up as an independent organisation. So that's what we did. And we gathered around us a representative sort of group of women who we thought would sort of cover the bases in terms of the professional organisations and the business organisations that were existing at the time. So we had, I've got a list here, we had a surveyor, Una Pod, we had an accountant, Anne Richardson, who I think is the only person other than me who's here today who was at that original meeting, which was at Mills and Reeve. We had Pat Hollands, who was at Barclays Bank. We had Jane Burke, who had the body shop franchises around East Anglia, of which more later. And then we had some sort of business organisations. So we had obviously the Chamber of Commerce, Norwich Enterprise Agency Trust, DTI Eastern Region, and Anne Lavery of the Prince's Youth Business Trust. And they were all interesting, dynamic women who'd been pretty successful in their own fields. And we brought them all together, floated the idea. And I have to say, there was some scepticism. Is there room for this sort of organisation? Is there really a gap in the market, or is Norwich already well serviced by these other organisations? So we decided to put it to the test. We each invited something like 6, I think about half a dozen colleagues and friends to an inaugural lunch. And at that lunch, I can remember I whizzed around with questionnaires and circulated questionnaires, and people had to tick boxes about whether or not they were interested in joining this sort of organisation. It was then interesting, we decided we would allow male speakers. So good job we did that, because I think we'd probably have run out of female speakers by now, but that was the decision that was taken. The idea of the other thing that we introduced, which I think is still the case now, was we would have it as a membership-only organisation, but the members were encouraged to invite guests. And when the guests came to maybe more than 1 or 2 lunches, they were then sort of slightly strong-armed into taking out membership themselves. And in that way, we would have this sort of exponentially growing membership organisation. So the sort of framework, all the features that we have in this organisation today were actually laid out all those years ago. And of course, they proved to be very successful. And in terms of the rationale behind it, it was, I suppose certainly where I was coming from was that I could see at the time a lot of organisations that were aimed at men, or were principally for men, or indeed were male only, and lots of opportunities for men to network, and not that many opportunities for women to network. So that was the genesis of the idea. And as I say, we picked our target group quite carefully because we thought they weren't being covered by the provision that was there from other organisations. It was this group of local professional and business women who were decision makers within their own organisations. So it was to be light-hearted, but with a reasonably serious core. And on that note, I brought with me a letter that Jane Burke, who I mentioned had the Body Shop franchises across East Anglia at the time. She came to that very first lunch and wrote to me afterwards, "Dear Rachel, I feel that the organisation has potential, so long as the conversation doesn't degenerate to shoes and fashion, as it did with at least 2 of the women I got into conversation with." So for those degenerates amongst you who have been discussing fashion and shoes, don't do it again. Anyway, I chaired the organisation from its inception until I had my first child in 2000, so I chaired it for a while. And I stayed on the board for a few years, but I have to confess I haven't been for an awfully long time. I would like to say, make it clear, I have always renewed my membership, as Jackie will tell you, but alas, I've just sort of got out. Well, I had a big case that ran for years and years, and then I sort of got out of the habit of coming. So to come back today and to see this, I mean, to see 99 people or however many people are here, we have technology, we have cameras. I mean, it's just extraordinary. So, you know, it's fantastic. It's wonderful. It's been very successful. And I'm delighted to be here today to help celebrate the 21st birthday. Thank you.